is, the question is not how I react, but what do we do? And my answer to that is head down.
I just couldn't resist playing that for you again. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. When we come back, talking about a potential federal election and the effects, consequences, ramifications that's potentially going to have on a number of issues in this country. Join me. It's David Krayden broadcasting to you live. We'll be right back.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
I hope you all caught my broadcast, 2 broadcasts yesterday. Actually, I had 3 of them up at one time. And what a day. Because I anticipated, just to recapitulate, I anticipated my interview with Katie Pasitne. I think I'm finally pronouncing her last name right. At 11 o'clock Eastern time. You know, I'm desperately calling up Katie 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes before the broadcast. I even called her mom saying, do you know where Katie is? Well, it turns out Katie's on the phone getting the news that Supreme Court will make a decision about whether or not to hear Universal Ostrich Farms' appeal of the decision by the CFIA to kill every last ostrich on that farm. Now, we've been watching this for quite some time. I'm hoping, of course, to get Katie's response Thursday morning, because they expect to have a decision. I just was looking this morning at the docket, Supreme Court of Canada. They expect to have a decision by 9:45 Eastern time. So that's 6:45 Pacific time. So by the time Katie gets up Thursday morning, she'll know. And I would say, she feels exactly like I do about this. Could go either way. Things have changed in the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks since that farm was invaded and occupied by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and its cohorts in the RCMP. Public opinion, I believe, has shifted decidedly in favor of the farm. And that's been in large part because of independent media that have gotten the truth out about what's been happening. Now, I want to share something with you because I found this absolutely fascinating. I want to share with. It's going to pop up because you've always got to make sure you've got, you've always got to make sure you can find these things. And I'm going to share the screen. This is absolutely fascinating, folks. Absolutely fascinating. Have a look at this. Like literally. Oh, sorry. That's not the one I wanted. All right, that's the one I want. Sorry. To go into that one. Bear with me, folks. I've got so much screen sharing going on today. Yes, here we go. Like literally within hours of my interviewing Katie and reporting that the farm would be seeking to remove the Canadian Food Inspection from the farm for abrogating and breaching the terms of the Supreme Court order, CFIA is up with another update on Halloween, October 31st, 2025. The CFIA is up with another update. I find this absolutely fascinating. And Katie, I don't believe has read this she hadn't read this last night. I'm sure she read it this morning, and she'll be putting a rebuttal out. But this is incredible because you can't tell me they're not watching the material that independent media is putting out, and actually what I'm putting out, because I don't believe anybody else out there has been putting out the information about the bird blender. There's been lots of social media about the fact the number of ostriches is definitely declining. And of course, CFIA lies about that in this news release, or whatever the hell this is. The CFIA lies about a number of other things in this document, but they're directly responding to the information that this reporter has been putting out about what's been going on that farm and why people are asking about these blender noises, these grinding noises at night, all these effluents being taken off the farm at 3 o'clock in the morning. What's going on? Why has the population of ostriches dropped to perhaps 200? Where are they going? CFIA is watching this. And you notice they don't say that's ridiculous. They just deny it. Watch this. As ordered by the Supreme Court of Canada, the CFIA continues to have custody of the birds. The birds. Sounds like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. While a decision on the farm's application for leave to appeal is being considered. The Supreme Court of Canada will be issuing its decision on Universal Ostrich Farm's application for leave to appeal on November 6, 2025. The CFI continues to provide feed, water, and bedding with CFI veterinary oversight. Yeah, right. How much feed, how much water are you providing? You're providing no bedding for some of the ostriches. And what kind of veterinary oversight are they getting when there's at least one bird limping around and it's getting no attention? The CFI is covering the cost of purchasing feed and hay from the preferred supplier of the farm. So the taxpayer is picking up the bill. How much are they buying though? This kills me. The CFI is providing the same amount of feed daily that the owners reported using prior to the CFI taking custody. Really? Is that why the birds are eating the leaves off the trees and the bark? Because they're starving? Incredible. These people are shameless. Preparations for the care of the ostriches during the winter season are being implemented by the CFIA based on the owner's description of past practices. Within the constraints created by the poor condition of the few facilities on the farm. What horse shit. And the need for operational security to prevent obstruction by individuals visiting or staying at the farm. This is more BS because the CFIA has literally taken over another farm, an adjacent farm, so they can conduct their work in secret and they can get off and on the farm without anybody bothering them, no protesters, no supporters, nobody sees what they're doing. They actually built a road on an adjacent property for this purpose. Notice how they say that. CFIA's estimated number of birds on the farm remains unchanged. And no flock information has been provided. What the hell does that mean? Okay, so their estimated number hasn't changed because they're not changing it. That doesn't mean it hasn't changed. It says their estimated number hasn't changed. They parse their language very carefully, this group. The CFIA has previously published estimates of there being 300 to 330 birds on the farm remains unchanged. Sure, you can publish whatever estimate you want. It doesn't have to be true. There have not been any bird deaths other than the one reported on since October 4th, 2025. I'm not buying that. Additionally, no ostrich body parts or liquefied or mechanically ground up ostrich remains have been removed from the farm or disposed of on the property. The fact that they even addressed that accusation, which I raised in a number of broadcasts last week, and you probably saw them, means they're worried we know the truth. They addressed it. If they thought it was groundless, baseless, idiotic, stupid, science fiction, they would never have even addressed it. By addressing it, they've given life to this accusation. That means it's probably true. When they deny it, it's probably true. So that's what's going on with the CFIA. The farm owners still have not responded to the agent's request for flock records or inventory information. Horseshit. The CFIA is unable to determine whether the difference between the current estimated number of birds on the farm and previous claims by the farm are the result of the flock being overreported or the number of deaths since December 2024 being underreported. This really is the kicker in terms of trying to discredit, debase, and smear Universal Ostrich Farms because they have done incredible scientific research. Katie talks about this all of the time. They have basically done research that the CFIA wants to expropriate. So that's why it's unsubstantiated. Don't look over there, folks. There's nothing to see. They haven't done any good research, and by the way, we'll just take it along just because even though it's bad, even though it's unsubstantiated, even though it's false, we'll take it anyway. The owners of every avian influenza infected premises are interviewed by the CFI to evaluate the risk of disease spread and determine whether premise will be classified as poultry or non-poultry. Any premises that request an exemption from the snapping up policy is also required to provide information about their operations to assess whether they will meet the exemption criteria. The Universal Ostrich Farms received an exemption from the CFIA on January 2nd, 2025. 8 days later, that exemption was rescinded without explanation. The explanation was the federal government had just purchased 500,000 anti-avian influenza vaccines, H5N1 vaccines, from GSK. In the case of the Ostrich Farm, the CFI has not received any evidence of research activities. Why don't you listen to Katie someday? You'll have ample evidence, but you're not listening. Or the development of testing applications developed by the owners or their companies. This is nonsense. For example, the CFI has not received formal documentation of research involving this flock, such as active research trial logs or detailed research protocols. No formal documentation of antibody production and collection from the flock has been provided. Nonsense. The CFI has not received any research to show the flock of ostriches currently under quarantine has a unique capacity to produce eggs with antibodies. I can't stand anymore. I'm sorry. That's it. But these are the lies that this farm has to deal with on a daily basis. The CFIA is worried. They know they have breached the terms of the Supreme Court order. They know they've gone way over the top. They know they've not cared for these birds. They know they've exhibited animal cruelty. They know they've neglected the health and safety of these animals. They know they have put this farm in a financially horrific condition. They know they're wrong. They know they're wrong because they won't test the birds. They know they're wrong because they won't let any independent individual, group, society, analyst across the fencing to count the number of birds that are left. Obviously, what they're saying doesn't add up to the truth. Anyway, I sent that to Katie last night. I'm sure other people have as well. And positive she'll come out with a rebuttal to that today. And I said, wait till you come to the part about the research, because it's one of the things Dave Belinsky, the co-owner of the farm, is proudest of. And that's one of the things that Katie talks about at every opportunity. And she also mentions the fact that CFIA wants that research. So the CFIA wants that research. The CFIA will discredit that research and say, well, there's no reason we want it, except it's no good, so we're just going to get rid of it. What a corrupt organization. This organization is so corrupt, it makes your skin crawl. And I am just so disgusted with Canada at this point. Really, really disgusted. So what happens when we get an election? All right. A couple things to discuss here, because I think this is going to go back to my share the screen. Excuse me for doing that today, but I got to. The Alberta Premier calls on Ottawa to use notwithstanding clause over child porn. Premier Daniel Smith, who will be on this show in about a week, should be a good 25-minute, 30-minute interview. We're going to be talking about this and the fact that she used the notwithstanding clause to force the Alberta teachers back to work. So instead of sitting on their asses doing nothing, they can sit on their asses in the schoolroom at least. Because I have no time or respect for most teachers today. I'm not saying all, but those teachers who do nothing except promote woke ideology in the classrooms, who are more obsessed with pronouns than they are reading, writing, and arithmetic, who are more obsessed with the LGBTQ agenda than they are with teaching history, or more interested in promoting political ideology and brainwashing the kids than they are teaching the kids the fundamentals they need to know. So, yeah, once again, the Supreme Court has they've said that they have struck down the mandatory minimum 1-year sentencing for possession of child porn. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith, gutsiest premier in the country. I know it doesn't take much to be the gutsiest premier in this country because most of them are spineless. But I say that in all earnestness. She is gutsy, and because she took on the school boards to say we're taking the pornography out of the elementary schools. Oh my God, with a pushback for that. Do you think that should be controversial? No, I don't think so. I don't think it should be controversial at all. People should say, thank God we got a premier who doesn't want 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds exposed to pornography in their libraries. But she took tremendous pushback from that. That's what they call censorship. Oh, like taking people off the internet for talking about political issues that the government doesn't like. They don't consider that censorship. That's dealing with misinformation and disinformation. But it's okay for the kids to view pornography. Good for you, Danielle. Good for you. You never cease to do the right thing on subjects like this, and I appreciate you doing that. Now we've got a little more here. Now, what happens if a federal election is called? Oh, we got one more. Share the screen for you here. All right, this is interesting. Now, I'm not going to go into the various polls. Conservatives say the Liberal government wants to trigger an election with its budget. The government says it doesn't yet have the votes to get its budget through. Now, there's a political game going on here, and if you've watched politics for more than 5 years, well, maybe even 5 months, you know what's going on right now. It's the blame game, because the Liberals, apparently, Mark Carney thinks he's going to win a majority government. I saw your comments this morning. There's polls out there saying the Liberals are at 40%, which is majority territory, and they're going to get a majority government. And Prime Minister Mark Carney wants an election, but he wants to make it look like the Conservatives want the election, and the Conservatives want to make it look like the Liberals really want the election. And I think the Liberals do, but the Conservatives also want an election, because I think they really would like to stop some of this odious legislation like Bill C-5, Bill C-8, Bill C-9. And we know the Online Harms Act, which will be renamed the Online Safety Act, is coming back this month. Attorney General Sean Fraser said at a September news conference, which I showed you, that the Online Harms Act would be coming back before the fall session ended. So that's before Christmas. Expect it this month. We've got 4 censorship and surveillance bills in front of the House of Commons right now. An election is the only way to stop these bills from becoming law, because those 7 NDP members of Parliament will vote with the government on that law. Will they vote And here's, yeah, here's the Liberal House leader. What does he say here? And of course, Finance Minister Francois Philippe Champagne is due to table the government's first budget next week. It's November 4th. And it's expected to include major investments in the military housing and support for workers and businesses. Yeah, right. And why? So why is Carney out there saying, "Oh, we're going to have to, you're going to have to anticipate, expect less, lower your expectations"? But clearly, if the Liberals haven't got enough votes for this, if the Liberals can't cobble together enough support on the vote approving the budget, the government could fall and Canadians could be headed for an election less than a year after the last one. The NDP, it's all up to the NDP, because the NDP has to decide whether or not they're going to be eradicated, whether or not they're going to be eradicated in a new election, meaning they're going to lose virtually all of their seats or all of their seats, or whether they think they can potentially double their seats. The polling out there is crazy. It's all over the map because some polls are suggesting the NDP have lost, have completely cratered, that they could be down to 2 seats. Other polls indicate the NDP could double their seats from 7 to 14. So what do you think the NDP communications policy people are doing right now? They're hunkering down and they're number crunching to see which of these polls is really most accurate for them. They're looking at all of the polls together. They're trying to figure out whether it's in their advantage or not to bring this government down. And you have to remember, they're in the middle of a leadership race, one of the most bizarre leadership races in the history of the world, where 50% of the people who sign your nomination form have to be non-cisgendered men. That means, like, men who know they're men. Yeah. And that is absolutely incredible. But if the NDP thinks they can double their numbers of seats in the House of Commons and become an official party again, you're darn right they will go for it. Because in the end, folks, it's always about the power. What else could happen, though, if this election is called? If the government falls next week, there's an opportunity for a political solution to the Universal Ostrich Farms crisis. Now, I bring this up today because I was thinking about this last night and this morning. What if the Supreme Court says, no, we're not going to hear the case? Is it over for the farm? Not necessarily, because the farm can find a political solution. Here's why they need to be liaising right now with the Minister of Agriculture to say, do you really want a mass killing, a slaughter of ostriches on this farm during an election campaign? Do you want that? What are the optics going to be for your government? Is that going to help you win your majority? Probably not. Because more people know about this issue now than knew about it when it began in December, when the so-called avian outbreak began. More people know about this now in April, when the legal battle really heated up, and I got involved in it by interviewing Katie for the first time. And more people are disgusted by it. So I think it would be a potential massive embarrassment for the Carney government to have this slaughter going on during an election campaign. And I think that might be saving grace, as well as proving that the RCMP and the CFIA have been in breach of the Supreme Court order for the last 5-6 weeks, since September 24th. Okay, so I'm looking at, okay, that's coming up to 6 weeks next Thursday. So that is an incredible opportunity for them. And I think that could well happen. So I want to go through some things here on my X page. because I've saved some of the best for last today. And this is absolutely shocking. All right, let's get back to the beginning here. This is interesting. And like I said, please have a look at my show from yesterday. And have a look at Katie's message after she talked to me yesterday. I think she's being very gracious about everything. How low will Carney go? Donald Trump claims that Mark Carney apologized for the Ronald Reagan advertisement campaign Doug Ford cooked up that Carney approved. Elbows up. He did. Carney admitted it this morning. And I don't often repost anything from Doug Ford, but I think he's right about this. The Supreme Court ruled against 1-year mandatory minimum sentences for the possession and access to child pornography. These people are predators, disgusting scumbags who prey on children. They belong behind bars for the rest of their miserable lives. So, how do you think the Supreme Court's going to rule on the Ostriches? Well, I have been assuming one thing. I'm not going to compromise anything by saying how I think they're going to come down, but I think it's a lot more problematic and complicated than a lot of us thought. This is a very troubled Supreme Court, and it's very interesting how they might interpret the ostrich issue, actually. And thank you for bringing this to my attention yesterday. This to me is crazy. And I love this from, I think it's Etams. Sorry. First, they burned churches. Then they arrested priests for preaching. Then they canceled concert permits for singing gospel music. Now they declare the Bible hate speech. If Christians still vote for more, that's on Christians. Evangelical Christians in Canada are some of the dumbest, most politically inept people on the face of the globe. So many of them vote Liberal or even NDP, God forbid, because they really think it doesn't matter. Liberals are nice people. Well, let's say how nice is Mark Miller, one of Justin Trudeau's buddies. Let's listen to what
just use the chair's prerogative for 2 seconds to ask a follow-up question to Mr. Ross. And as despicable and as unlawful, I believe the statements made by Mr. Shakawi were and would be if they were stated again. We don't know why the prosecution chose not to continue with the charges. And perhaps it is to Mr. Fortin's point. I just want to dig in a bit about the concept of good faith, Mr. Ross. In Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Romans, there's other passages, there is clear hatred towards, for example, homosexuals. I don't understand how the concept of good faith could be invoked if someone were literally invoking a passage from, in this case, the Bible, but there are other religious texts that say the same thing, and somehow say that this is good faith. I mean, clearly there are situations in these texts where these statements are hateful. They should not be used to invoke or be a defense, and there should perhaps be discretion for prosecutors to press charges. I just want to understand what your notion of good faith is in this context, where there are clearly passages in religious texts that are clearly hateful.
Stupid SOB. So he wants to throw people in jail. And this is already happening around the world, by the way. Pastors have been thrown in jail for quoting the Bible because it does not approve of homosexual behavior, homosexual activity. And yeah, that's what the Bible says. There's something called freedom of religion you have with Mark Miller. Are you aware of that? No. The liberals don't respect, acknowledge, nurture, or give a damn about freedom of religion. Now, let's watch this again, because this is a great moment on the farm.
Because we're going after we're going to be filing this in court for the emergency storage. Get over here, Ella, shy. For the emergency stay order that we're in. And I just wanted to put everybody here, this history of everybody on.
You'll have to talk to our police.
you guys can accept to notice that you guys are free. Oh, we've always been able. There's never been a problem with serving you guys, giving you guys papers ever. No? Okay. I don't understand.
Well, it's okay. You can give it to the liaison.
Okay.
They're responsible.
Lester, we're just letting everybody know that we're going after a breach of Supreme Court order, and it is maintain a stay of custody, and they are not doing that, which means that everybody involved, we're just trying to let you know where we're going with this. We're protecting, obviously, life versus death here. There's a bunch of our animals that are being abused and neglected, and we're just letting you guys all know from this is just our new Supreme Court order, motion of stay, and our old one to show you that there's a difference, as well as notice, and just letting you know what the definition of a maintain custody means.
Oh,
Really?
There you go.
so
evidently,
you're all liable, is what you're saying.
no RCMP have everybody treated us like this way before. Obviously, I'm going to guess
There was
they
one
know.
in the back.
They know.
Whistled him in.
Yeah, he
I'm
went
gonna
like
say-
this. He went.
I'm going to say they know that
Yeah.
everybody here is under direct contempt of aiding in this. We're in. I think we just made some progress, everybody.
100%.
Yeah, I think they made some progress here. So what does that mean? She's trying in this video snippet here, she is trying to give the notice to the RCMP. Physically, if people come, if you're being summoned, it's like a summons. She's trying to give the RCMP the notice physically, and they won't take it. And this is the notice that says the CFIA has breached the conditions of the Supreme Court order from September 24th. RCMP won't even look at it. What does that tell you? And of course, my good friend Jason Levine, after I think I was the first one to report that the Supreme Court sorry, I didn't say that. The Supreme Court would reveal its decision on November 6th. So, but Jason Levine put this up shortly thereafter. Good show. And it's amazing to me. I think I've got one through here. One more. Thank you, Nick, by the way, because I get a lot of people every day who tell me, stop talking about the ostriches. Well, potentially I might be stopping talking about the ostriches in another week or so, but in the meantime, I'm going to talk about it every day, along with other news. And believe me, if the government, I will be covering the budget this week, and I will be covering any decision by the House of Commons, by the parties there, to vote against the budget and thereby causing the government to fall. But I like what Nick says here. It is beyond me how this can take place. What is that saying? This country is out of control. Second, David, you're doing a fantastic job and doing one hell of a job. Keep it up. Thank you. And by the way, Agent I still don't know if it's Blue Sky or Blusky. She and I actually talked to this woman the other day and thanked her for the tremendous work she's doing. She's provided so much information to me, and so she has faced the government occupation of her property in the past. And she writes here, the CFIA contagion rules runs out of steam at 300 days. Coming up to that, the CFIA and courts have sponsored this type of rodeo before. Time out the claim. Kill as much as possible in between orders. Moot the case on timeout and block all challenges. They have a playbook. Sean Buckley knows. So, and I can't believe more people aren't madder than hell over this Brookfield nuclear reactor story. I put a Substack piece out about this. I did a show about it the other day, and nobody really seems to give a damn. And I'm thinking, are Canadians just so used to corruption? I mean, dirty deal. Read my Substack. Carney cashes in with Brookfield $80 billion deal. Now, it's true they're sharing this with Cameco, but this is incredible. Mark Carney is on bended knee with Donald Trump every time they have a little tete-a-tete, every time they have a meeting. And you wonder why? Maybe it's got something to do with Brookfield getting more money from the U.S. government. And yes, Mark Carney used to be the chairman of Brookfield. Does he still own stock in that company? I would suggest he probably does. We don't know, though, because he's put all of his financial interests in the blind trust that his chief of staff is responsible for. However, we know he has at least 103 different conflicts of interest. So I'd encourage you to read that and care about the fact that this is the most corrupt government in the history of Canada, even more corrupt than Justin Trudeau. And it's only been a government, what, for 8 months? Actually, maybe 10 months if you include Carney's time as appointed prime minister. Yeah. And there I go. I talked about the bird blender on Redacted on Thursday night. By Friday, the CFIA is denying we're not doing this. We're not disposing of the birds. We're not blending the birds. We're not destroying them in any way. I think they're worried. And I think that's exactly why. If they didn't see it on my show, I can guarantee you their media people who monitor the news every day saw this report on Redacted and said, holy crap. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. All right, I think we can stop sharing for a while. Thank you for your patience on this, but I'll be back in a minute with some concluding remarks. Well, we'll put some more remarks before we leave you today. Yes, please have a look at the store. And I'm cutting a little shorter today because I'm taking off for a little mini vacation. I'm back again. I'll be back again tomorrow, probably doing a broadcast in the afternoon. I will be back. I'm estimating probably about 2-3 o'clock tomorrow. And hopefully I'll have some more updates on what's happening in Edgewood. Trying to get a hold of Katie this morning, but she'll get back to me by tomorrow, and we'll let you know. But I am just exhausted. I have been working long hours on not just the Ostrich farm file, but other things, and writing as well as doing the broadcasting, and just being there. There's a protest next week, and I'll be talking about this tomorrow, in front of CFIA headquarters in Ottawa. Now that's Wednesday, and I haven't got the time in front of me. I meant to do that. I will let you know tomorrow, so you have plenty of time, because it's on Wednesday. It's downtown Ottawa. I think downtown Ottawa. CFIA headquarters. If that's downtown or not, I'm not sure. It might be in that little bureaucratic ghetto that I call it, just outside of the downtown core. Might be there, but please come out and show your support for Katie and the Universal Ostrich Farm, and your opposition to the dictatorial, tyrannical activities of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency under Agriculture Minister Heath MacDonald. This must stop. And I think if we get a lot of folks out on Wednesday, I don't know if it's going to make any difference. Everything adds weight to the argument, and we need to see you there. Thanks for watching today. I will be back tomorrow. This has been David Krayden broadcasting to you live from Ottawa. You've been watching Stand on Guard. I'll be back again tomorrow. Have a great Saturday and take some leisure time. Take some time off to think about Canada's future. And by the way, I think we're going to have an election. I think this government will fall. And I pray it does, because it's the only thing that's going to stop some very dangerous legislation that's coming at us. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.